Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are discussing the Sutra Parinama Ekatvat Vastu Tattvam. Its little prelude to it would be that if everything is from Sattva Rajatama Gunas, if that is the source material cause, anything should come out of anything. Everything should come out of everything. So it won't be universe, it won't be cosmos, it would be chaos, and it would be diverse. So we were saying that the parinama ekatvat, it is the process of change which decides on the output. So we saw that milk in one channel can become curds and milk in another channel can become clarified butter. So that's how this discussion came, that parinama ekatvat, it is specific parinama, specific changes will give you specific result, and therefore universe is not diverse but universe, and it is cosmos and not chaos. So therein we were discussing that there are philosophers who are realists and idealists. The realists hold that all that is visible world is true. Mountains, rivers, flowers, fruits, animals, cattle, things, all these are real. And that's why we have the whole science of physics. While there are idealistic philosophers who are called panpsychists, Vijnanavadis, Drushti Srushtivadis, they have another point of view. They say all that is around you is mental fabrication. So they have their own logic, and they have quite strong logic and quite formidable logic. So this topic has gotten up in our discussion of this sutra. They say that yes, if the rivers and mountains and things are all real, how do they come in dream? You also in the dream experience you see that the mountains, they are ditto like mountains, real mountains. Oceans are like ditto like real oceans. The flowers are ditto like real flowers. Anything that comes in dream is ditto the same, and that's why the dream is dream, and we know how the dream experience is. So if the dream can fabricate the things which we experience in the physical world, and then the dream objects are not as real as objects of physical world, they say physical world objects are also mental fabrications. They have some strong argumentations. We will consider those. So suppose they are citing a rose, a flower, real flower, actual flower, and you say this is rose. How do you know that this is rose? Who knows that this is rose? It is a perception. So cognition is there. So it all happens in mind. Object which is outside on the plant, say on a rose plant there is a rose, and you say this is rose. How do you know that this is rose? How do you say that this is rose? How do you declare that this is rose? How do you deem that this is rose? Because you have rose in your mind. You know the rose. You know that that is rose, therefore it is rose. Who is this you? Where is this you? You is in the mind. So, it is the mind which has to have rose as a perception. If the mind doesn't have the rose, the image of rose in itself, then the rose outside is no rose. You don't say this is rose. If the reflection of the rose is not caught in the mind, you can't really say that what is outside is rose. So the physical object outside has such a strong dependence on the mind psyche consciousness that unless they hold the image of it, you won't say this is rose. Why do you say this is rose? Because you say, I know this as rose. I know that this is rose, therefore this is rose. I know. Now these are all mental aspects. The I is in the mind. Knowledge is in the mind. So unless there is knowledge in the mind, and unless there is the locus of pronoun I, the rose outside is not rose at all. It is not even visible. It is not even visible. The rose outside, which is real rose of the tree or in a vase, goes unsighted. The mind must know it. And only when the mind knows, then you say this is rose. It is not that there is a rose and therefore mind knows the rose. A mind should know the rose, then only that is a rose. So they have strong argumentations, the panpsychists. So therefore, that is how they have these strong postulations of panpsychism. But then the other philosophers have repudiation of this postulation. They do repudiate. Say for example, there are 4 people sighting the rose. Now, which person out of the 4 persons, the mind of that person is fabricating the rose? The 4 people are seeing that as a rose. Now, if you say that the external rose is a mind fabrication, whose mind out of the 4 has fabricated rose? So then they don't have a specific answer. Moreover, those are perceiving, cognizing rose will have 4 different reactions. Say for someone is a botanist. One of the mind is botanist mind. What kind of thought is there in the botanist's mind? So that will be the breed of the rose, etc., etc. So that will be what in the mind of a botanist, some horticulturist. The horticulturist also will have different thought process. Then the neurologist will explain, we will have different thought process. That the nervous system, there are synapses, etc., etc., there is a perception, etc., etc. So he has different mind processes. There might be another person who is delirious person and who thinks of his keep with extramarital relations. He will think of his beloved. So see, diverse thought processes. The mind is functioning in a diverse ways, out of 4 or 5 or 10 people, then whose mind has fabricated the rose at sight? Is it the mind of the devout devotee, or is it one who is having extramarital relationships and has thoughts about his beloved? Or is it a horticulturist whose mind has turned out? Or is it a botanist whose mind has turned out the rose? Or is it a physicist whose mind has turned out the rose? Or is it a neurologist whose mind has turned out rose? So there is no answer, because they have different reactions in their mind. Therefore, the rose outside cannot be said to be dependent on the mind, as the panpsychists believe. Because 10 people or 100 people will have different mind processes, out of which mind process the rose outside has been turned out, that cannot be postulated. So, rose outside is independent of the mind. Whether you sight the rose or you don't sight the rose, whether you are a blind person or a person with sight, the rose is there. So rose is an independent entity, and it is not a mental fabrication. So this is the position of someone like Patanjalas, who are repudiating the standpoint of panpsychists or Vijnanavadins. Vijnanavadins is a branch of Buddhism. So, if they had a strong logic, as we saw a while ago, then those who are in counterposition and those who are refuting it also have a sound argument. So, the panpsychism is reputed by realists and even by the Patanjalas. When the Patanjalas take a step beyond the realists, the Patanjalas say that what you see around, the universal phenomenon, where there are things of various kinds and various classes and various colors and various forms and various matters, the Srushti, the creation, is true. Now, how is that creation true? It is not as it appears, but as it inherently is. So again, that opens out further realm of argumentations. The things are not as they appear, but that as they are essentially are. Things are as they are essentially, but we don't see them as they are essentially, we see them as they appear. And therefore, the external object is both, having both the aspects that it is not real as much as it should be real, and it is not unreal as much as it can be taken as unreal. So that's how there is a polemic warfare between various philosophers. Now we just now saw that all these objects can appear in the dreams. No object has a taboo. No real object that we see in the world has a taboo to come in the dream. But we know, after all, it is a dream. Once we are awake, come to awakeful state, we say, "Oh, that was a dream." So we invalidate the experience because that is a dream. Now, it is also true that Jagrata Avastha, according to philosophers of the lore or philosophies of the lore, it is called Dirgha Swapna. The Jagrata Avastha is also Dirgha Swapna. That is why Patanjala say that the things of awakeful state, experience of the awakeful state which are around us are true, but they are not true as they appear, they are true as they inherently are, intrinsically are. So there is aspect of fallacy and reality, both. So if it is real, how it is real and how it is not real. If it is untrue, how it is untrue and how it is not untrue. So multi-dimensional arguments find a room. Now, from the Sankhya point of view, say for instance, water, a substance of water. Now, water is a substance, it is a liquid matter. But with the help of modern science, we realize water is nothing but electrical fusion of hydrogen and oxygen in the proportion H2O. It's electrical fusion of two gases. But then water is not a gaseous matter. Water is a liquid matter. While hydrogen and oxygen both are gases. So little education about physics or little knowledge about physics tells us that when you are thirsty, you don't go for hydrogen or oxygen. But when you are thirsty, you go for water. Water quenches your thirst. Hydrogen and oxygen are gases and they won't quench your thirst. But then what is actually water is actually electrical fusion of two gases. Now water appears as water. Hydrogen, oxygen don't appear as water. And water doesn't appear as hydrogen and oxygen. So, even the modern science, we get an endorsement for the view that the Sankhyas hold, Patanjalas hold. Then if you go further in physics, hydrogen has atomic structure, oxygen has atomic structure. The nucleus of any atom and every atom is subatomic particles of proton, neutron, electron. Now from proton, neutron, electron, which are at the nucleus of an atom, give us diversified manifestations of all kinds of matters, solid, liquid, gaseous, all kinds of matters, as we saw in the last session, valuable to of paltry value or no value, poisonous to nectarine, propitious to dangerous. So all those things are in the subatomic structure composed by proton, neutron, electron. So physics can ultimately take us to the nucleus of an atom. But a metaphysicist of Sankhya and Patanjali system takes us little beyond, further beyond rather. The two examples that we just now dealt with, one is rose and the other one is water. Now, rose and water both are coming from a process. Quintuplicated matter and then elemental matter, then tanmatra matter, which is subtle matter, metaphysically subtle matter, then the mahat, the ahankara tattva, which is supra matter, and then mahat tattva, which is supra matter, and all that comes from alinga. So the philosophers have a deeper insight about the things which are around us. Are they real? How much are they real? Are they real and not unreal combinations? If so, in what proportion? If they are unreal, are they totally unreal or with a touch of realness as well? So, it's an interesting topic that is getting raised up in our discussion of the sutra. So the Patanjala's view is like this, to put it in brief. What is in front of you, is it true or untrue? So as I repeatedly told you, it is not, the appearance form is not true. If you are only citing appearance form, then that is not true. But inherently, it is true. It is existent. So, it requires little evolved intelligence to really understand the fact about what is around us. Then later, at a higher level of consciousness, we get a statement, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, Vishnumayam Idam Jagata, or that very well-known verse from Bhagavad Gita, one who is a realized person. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastine Shuni Chai Vashvapake Cha Panditaha Samadarshinaha. So what at sight might be a noble, wise, sagacious a person, or maybe even elephant, or could be a dog, or could be a pariya. For the realized person, all are same. Vasudevam idam sarvam. Sarvam khalvidam Brahma. Everything is of the nature of Vasudeva. Everything is Brahma. Everything is Vasudeva. So there is something called Vyavaharika Satya and Paramarthika Satya. This we had discussed earlier while dealing with the principle of Satya in the second of the Yamas. So, the philosophers, Oriental philosophers, have this to say: Vyavaharika Satya, Pratibhasika Satya, and Paramarthika Satya. There are three grades of the entity of the truth. And we had discussed this earlier. So, the philosopher's view is totally different here than a stark realist or a stark idealist. So the point is, all that knowledge that you get about this is rose, this is mountain, this is river, this is ocean, this is cow, that is cat, this is elephant, that is cobra, it all comes to subjective entity, which is I. Now the I is actually imposition. Druk darshan shaktior ekatmata iva aspita. So it is an imposition. And therefore there is something which is pratibhasika satya, because your pronoun I itself is pratibhasika. It is imposed entity. Bhasamana chaitanyam. So we had considered the chaitanya and bhasamana chaitanyam. Bhasamana means imposed entity. So very pronoun I is imposed entity. So the philosophers have a different plane of argument here than the plane that realist and idealistic philosophers or the proponents have. Anyway, the point is, the sattva, raja, tama gunas, which are the basic, fundamental, original dharmi, characterized, and all the characteristics come out of it. It could be vyakta or sukshma. And therefore we had a sutra, te vyakta sukshma gunatmanaha. But then again we are told that it is not that anything can come out of anything, not that anything can come out of everything, not that everything can come out of anything. So there is orderliness in the nature, in the prakriti, and that is why what we have is cosmos and not chaos. And to postulate that, this 14th sutra has come, parinama ekatvat vastu tattvam. A specific kind of parinama, specific form of change gives rise to a particular manifestation. And therefore there is no chaos as such. There is that orderliness in the nature. Nature is universe, nature is cosmos. And therefore they stand that external object is a mental fabrication. It is set aside. Because the question comes, which of the chitta fabricates the object? And then, therefore, this question has been taken up in the following sutra, because we just now discussed that there are 4 or 5 people, and then from whose mind the external rose is fabricated, or how it has manifested. So this question came up in the advent of our discussion, and therefore the 15th sutra comes to answer this. Vastu samye chitta bhedat tayoho vibhaktaha panthaha. So, if the vastu is only one, and in the different minds and different chittas, there are different jnanas and different knowledges and different reactions, but yet the object doesn't change. So that is what we are going to delineate upon in the sutra to follow, which is the 15th sutra of the 4th chapter. So we will take that up in our next session. Namaskar all of you.